Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're doing something a little bit different. We're having a discussion panel, and we're talking about implications and promises of blockchain technology. And I'd like to start with introducing you to our panelists here. Michael Yuan, you'd seen speak a little bit earlier, and we have next to him Phil Ziegler, and of the Lending Coin, and we have Simon Yu of StormX and Daniel Araya of BCT. So let's start at this end. Michael, can you tell us again, in a nutshell, a little bit about your project?
Oh, yeah.
And who you are.
Okay.
For those who haven't seen you yet.
All right. Can I sit?
Yeah, you can just sit.
Okay. All right. My name is Michael Yuan, and I'm the chief scientist at the CyberMiles Foundation. And at CyberMiles, we want to build the next blockchain platform that is optimized for e-commerce.
Speak more in the microphone.
So our worldview is that each vertical application space needs its own public blockchain, because we cannot have a world computer that is optimized for nothing. So that's the engineering principle that we come from. So we are building one for the e-commerce space.
I'm Phil Ziegler, and I'm the visionary behind the Lending Coin, and heavily involved in every aspect of cryptocurrency. Didn't know anything about it 4+ years ago, and now we have a big data mine, we have blockchain developers, and just everything crypto we live and breathe now.
Hi everyone, my name is Simon Yu. I'm the CEO of StormX, the creator of Storm Token. We've been around for almost 4 years, rewarding people by completing micro tasks. And we're disrupting the freelance market, we're disrupting machine learning and how people earn money throughout the world. And we have right now about 1.5 million users across 187 countries. We have some amazing brands on our platform. We have a mobile app on Android right now that services like Uber, Hulu, DraftKings, a lot of an actual real utility case on the blockchain for several years.
Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Araya. I'm an executive with BCT, Blockchain Terminal. We're out there, I don't know if any of you came by. We're basically an integrated hardware software platform that's trying to bridge the institutional investor and the cryptocurrency investor, provide industry grade tools that will allow everyone to trade crypto, but at a fairly sophisticated level.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We were talking a little bit earlier out there. Can you tell us a little bit more about exactly how BCT is doing this for adoption for a broader population?
So I understand your question. Let me start by saying our focus is essentially hedge funds. We're located in New York City, and our goal is to bring the hedge fund community, the institutional investor, the pension fund investor, the family office into the crypto world, and to do it in a way that's regulated and secure and it provides compliance. And our goal is essentially to build enough capital to then provide the tools for the mainstream. So for the moment, we're in a sense focused on the high end, but our goal ultimately is to be as ubiquitous as possible. Our platform is open source. It provides APIs for all developers to provide resources to not just trade cryptocurrencies, but to provide content, to develop trading tools. You know, anything that you can imagine that would go on a platform that would appeal to cryptocurrency traders or anyone in the crypto space, we want to make widely available in as sophisticated a model as possible. So for the moment, we're looking at integrated hardware, a terminal, sort of like the Bloomberg terminal, you might say. But over the long term, we want to have mobile apps, we want to have tablets. But what we really want is high-grade tools. It's to democratize access to the kinds of tools that right now only Wall Street has access to.
Okay, so if you hadn't had a chance to take a look at the terminal out there, I'd recommend you look at it. And one of the things that you showed that's different is you're actually integrating with all the exchanges out there, and that's really what is your product, if you want to expand a little bit on that.
Right, so we're not a broker-dealer. we're not an exchange, but what we are is an interface to exchanges. And essentially what we're trying to do is figure out how to manage this regulatory minefield in such a way that we're a utility token, or we're hoping to be a utility token, and we're trying to find the right interface that allows ease of access with high-grade tools to as many exchanges as possible. And in turn, whether we use AI or whatever form to facilitate some arbitrage and other kinds of mechanics for enabling the crypto market in broad on a global scale. But we work in the United States mainly, and hopefully with a global goal, global strategy.
Okay, and let's go to Simon. Simon, can you tell us a little bit about what blockchain you're using? And you talked about your application, and can you expand more on who's actually using it? You mentioned you have over 187 countries and real world uses, and so how is StormX different than what we're seeing out there?
Yeah, so we're on the Ethereum blockchain, and I mean, obviously we used it because it's been prevalent for so long, and integrations with partner companies, and there's a lot of pros for being on Ethereum blockchain, but because it has been too popular, and as most of you guys have probably heard of what CryptoKitties has done with the blockchain, there are some scaling issues, so we are looking for whether we need to build our own blockchain or we need to switch to different blockchains, and that's one of the business decisions that we always have to make on a daily basis. So a little background about us. So we actually started back in 2014. I was really fascinated about Bitcoin back then because my last job was in banking as an underwriter. I saw a lot of transaction fees that were happening every single day, and back then Bitcoin was a lot on the news a lot, and it was on the news a lot for bad reasons because of Mt. Gox and Silk Road. Is this the next money smuggling, or like the drug smuggling, money laundering tool? Or so the CNN, CNBC, that's all they would talk about. But before I did a research paper, and I did look into the Bitcoin technology, and I was really fascinated. We had this power all of a sudden to send someone payments across the world, just without any transaction fees. And so that opportunity, just even being able to disrupt the credit card payment system, like 2.75% transaction for everything that you go through, that was itself just a multi-trillion-dollar industry. So I figured this is going to be really big. And so for us, is like, we believed, my co-founder and I, for technical reasons, he's a technical guy, we believed that this was going to be a massive opportunity, and we wanted to give people the power to earn Bitcoin for free without having to risk their money buying it, because that was the one reason why people didn't want to step into this industry. And so we started with a very simple concept, earn like 0.2 of a penny, just by watching a simple video, and then all of a sudden we started growing an organic, user base of 250,000 people, and we realized, wow, holy crap, there's an opportunity. Even though we're paying someone 2 cents or 3 cents, because it took such little time and effort, they were able to do it, and like there was no, they were bored and they just wanted to earn money, and so that's how we started, and people really liked it. And what we realized is, as we were finding more ways to give people earning opportunities, people in emerging countries, especially, like Brazil or India or Indonesia, that we were actually giving them a different lifestyle by giving them a couple dollars. But before this technology, we never had the ability to send people a few cents without occurring large fees. There's wire fees, PayPal fees, foreign transaction fees, but now we had the power to do so. And so for us, is we're disrupting the next step, and that's the freelance job market and the machine learning tasks as well too, because more and more people have accessibility to smartphones and laptops, and we can now have the power to just be able to take a few hours of your time and do a secondary job. And so we picked Ethereum as a blockchain. So one of the reasons is because we have 3 advisors that co-created Ethereum. And but one of the issues of having an actual product out there right now is that demand just grew too quickly because of speculation and all these projects getting massive funding and just coming in, that there's a serious scaling problem that happens. So I think that's one of the main topics of 2018 that we'll see in the blockchain space.
Simon, can I ask you a little bit? You mentioned you're paying for watching videos. Now, who is actually paying? Are they advertisers?
Yeah, so we actually have like hundreds of brands that are working with us in our current product. So we have like Uber, Hulu, DraftKings, FanDuel, like Amazon, Twitter, just lots of mainstream guys, and also like the cryptocurrency companies as well too that want exposure to all these users. So these guys pay us, we take a small fee and then give most of it back to the users. And I think that's one of the cool parts about blockchain is we're necessarily just connecting two parties, and the middleman doesn't really need to be involved. We can have smart contracts automating a lot of systems and turn the key when all the check marks are all approved. So that the biggest expense for tech companies is the fact that you have developer costs, and if we can get rid of a majority of it, then we can give more cost savings back to the people that are looking to hire and people that are looking to work.
So how do your advertisers, what's the quality of the people who are actually watching it? Is it, just someone in India who's not going to ever use Blue Apron? Or how do you guarantee, is there any guarantee on that?
So I mean, we have targeting and fraud systems. So I mean, the advertisers can choose, what type of demographics that they want to reach. So it doesn't make sense for like a gaming company to reach, a 60, 70-year-old person in, Europe or something like that. They target 25 to 34-year-old,
Okay,
male and female. And actually, surprisingly, an interesting fact about gaming companies is a lot of mobile gaming app companies target 35 to 50-year-old females. So interesting statistic, because they spend the most money while they're waiting for their kids at the soccer and stuff like that. So that's the most profitable. So interesting fact for guys in the gaming industry and tech. So.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Phil, would you like to expand on how your project is changing the world with blockchain?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the fascinating thing about blockchain is for us, I've been a real estate investor ever since I was 18. I bought a house, another house, and another one until my parents said I had to move out and live in one of them. So when that happened, I took a job working for Hewlett Packard and just continued my love and passion for real estate. And now currently built a tech mall in Boise, Idaho, where we have 22 tenants. And one of those tenants came and said, "Hey, can I put a Bitcoin ATM in your mall?" And I'm like, "Well, what's a Bitcoin?" And that was 4.5 years ago. And now, as a lover of technology and of commercial real estate, I've found a need for how all of us in this room can all work together with peer-to-peer lending. And the part I can't stand about real estate is the fact of the ridiculous parts and archaic parts of funding it, right? We all go to banks and we put in an application and we wait and we wait and we wait. And, you hear some creative ways of banks not saying yes, right? And, and then every once in a while, they think they know when is the best time for us to build a project where, as a entrepreneur, I seem to know best when to build, not like in the high markets like right now. I build my buildings when they're down market so I could get lower cost and put people to work and so forth. So with this new model based on the blockchain empowered real estate platform that we have launched called the Lending Coin, people can all work together as a peer-to-peer, and we could keep track of everything. So let's say that all of us in this room put in, let's say, $1,000, and we fund an opportunity, or maybe $10,000 each, and somebody else puts in $20,000, and then $200. Well, that would be really tough in the past, because how do we keep track of all of it? But with the blockchain, it's super easy. It takes down those barriers of trust where we don't have to worry about, well, how much did you put in? And hey, did you make this payment? It's all transparent on the blockchain.
Okay, so what kind of interest rates will you have?
Yes, great question. That's another major disruptor. We not only want to change the way banking is done, we're going to really disrupt it. And we can do that by offering a 0.25% below prime. So most banks are going to look for 1 to 2% above prime, but we're 0.25% below prime. So absolutely incredible and a good savings for any good candidate.
Okay, and how do you, what are the consequences for not paying your loans back? Have you?
Yeah,
thought
well,
about-
obviously a consequence would fall into a default, just like any banks or any other situation, which that's why we're really careful at putting our best foot forward, and we're only loaning to, we have a 5-stage criteria. One is that you have to have experience in real estate. You have to, right now we're only doing commercial real estate because that's where banks like to charge us 5-6+% because it's an investment property. So we're not talking residential where you get the low 3% because that's not the market we're targeting right now. Plus there's less rules and regulations behind commercial.
And
But-
what stage are you in?
So great, yeah. So in the next few weeks, we're going to be launching at Token Fest in California, San Francisco, and then our attorneys and so forth have given us a full scale of where we can be. Right now, we launched our first tranche, is the terminology, because we're really focused on being a fully regulated token. So.
Okay, very good. Michael. So can you expound again for those who have not seen your presentation a little bit more about your project?
Okay, yeah, so since we are in Dallas, many of you probably have heard of this company called 5 Miles, and it's a peer-to-peer marketplace and have over 10 million users in the US and have about $3 billion in transaction. And so a lot of people ask us, because Cyber Miles Foundation raised money in connection with 5 Miles. People ask, why do you guys need to raise so much money, and why, when you compete against the big players like Amazon and eBay, would they be able to do something like that and things like that? So from my background as a VC, as an investor in this space, it's really obvious that the market centralization to build a winner-take-all market by either Amazon or eBay or Alibaba in China has made it extremely unappealing for companies ranked from number 2 to number 10 to raise money. Because if you think about it, think about the amount of money you have to put in to compete against Amazon. So to build another centralized network is really unappealing to anyone. And so the way forward to disrupt this status quo is really to combine the resources from the number 2 to number 100, bind them together to build another network to compete against the biggest centralized network. However, in the old days, it's impossible because the legal document alone gonna drown all of you guys. There's different ways of looking at how to share the profit that generated from the market and all that stuff. So because of that, so I use the example of Uber and Austin, and the nonprofit start to compete against them. All those efforts has been failed in the past because the nonprofits have no way to raise enough money to compete against the centralized players, and they are not as efficient, and they cannot come to the legal agreements that's necessary for them to compete. So one of the big visions of CyberMiles is that we can that we can build a good enough network that would have all kinds of e-commerce players find it easy to use our network, and it's going to be jump-started by the 10 million users on the 5 Miles platform. So we're going to instantly have a fairly big network and be able to grow that network and compete against the biggest players in this world. And so I'm not really worried about the number 1 network to compete against us, because this is something they would never do. If you have an opportunity, let's be very frank, if you have an opportunity to be the number 1 centralized network in e-commerce, go for it. Never do the decentralized thing, because those are the for number 2 to number 100, right? So Amazon would never do something that we do. It's fundamentally disruptive to their business model. So that's.
Now, you mentioned that what's going to be different about your blockchain is it's going to be specialized for financial services, right?
For e-commerce.
For e-commerce. And so how would you say you'd compete with, say, an Amazon or one of those?
Right. So that's I guess I'm preemptively answering your question, is that we do not think we are competing against Amazon. We are disruptive to them. It's either them or us. There's no middle way, because in the network game, it's winner takes all. The number 2 network in anywhere in the world doesn't matter. You cannot build a number 2 network on e-commerce, because no one care about the number 2 network. So that's
Okay.
it's yeah.
And where did CyberMiles get its name?
Oh well, it's I guess our founder Lucas likes the name. It's connected to the miles with 5 Miles. So that's our roots, right? That's where we get our start for the network effect.
Okay. And do you have some other thoughts about the implications of blockchain in other areas that you?
Yeah, blockchains, like, we have heard all this, very interesting application use cases. I think one thing you see in common is blockchain is really good at building network, building marketplace, which is what e-commerce is, lending is, and peer-to-peer contribution is. I think if you have to look at blockchain, so-called blockchain applications looking in those areas, looking, especially that one that's close to money, that's close to finance, right? That's so you feel, that's when we look at blockchain projects, there are lots of token cell projects that's somewhat forced, that has no network effect, which we thought it would be not a good investment. But the good ones all have network effects, are building networks and building marketplaces.
Okay, thank you. And Phil, would you like to comment on an area that might be different from some other projects and some of the projects that the other gentlemen are doing and impact on the world?
I don't know about different. I love what you're saying about disrupting the merchant services. That's kind of near and dear to my heart. I can't stand how like one of my companies, we pay $80,000 a year for just a middleman to do the job, where I would love to, at least see that way lowered or to be completely obsolete in the near future. And that's kind of what we want to see with the entire thing of blockchain. It gives us that capability where we could all do business around the world. Like some of the ASICs miners that we purchased, I was able to purchase $20,000 worth of them for 1 penny. I sent, that was a transaction from me in Boise, Idaho, sending somebody in China, which is Bitmain, and it was a penny. I mean, that's unreal to me. They didn't have to pay a 3.5% or 2.5% for that merchant transaction to take place. So to me, this is just an incredible way that all of us can take ownership of the blockchain and work together with each other.
Okay. Simon, would you like to talk about some of the other projects that are your favorites in the area?
Yeah, not like specific projects, but I mean, I do like, the real estate idea. I do like the trading. I mean, there's in the commerce space as well too. I think the space I'm in right now, as an entrepreneur level, I think most of us here see kind of what Jeff Bezos saw back when they were trying to make books shipping online. Everyone thought like that's a crazy idea. There's Barnes and Noble across the street. Like, why would I buy a book from online? But everyone, the philosophy here is we're all trying to disrupt something. There's a much bigger opportunity out there, but right now the space is just really early. I know because the market cap and all the cryptocurrencies went up so much that everyone thinks the bubble is about to pop. But in terms of the technology, I think in terms of blockchain, where we are with the internet is where we were at dial-up. We had to plug in to actually be able to do something on the internet. It took away our phone lines, and it was extremely slow. It was expensive, but I kind of see Ethereum as, in a way, as AOL was back then. 90% of the people are using AOL, and DSL and cable came along, and Ethereum is working on switching over from proof of work to proof of stake, and they're also working on sharding, and there's other blockchain aspects other blockchain protocols that are building more of a centralized layer. But I think one of these guys will really hit it, and they'll be able to process transactions even better than MasterCard or Visa. And I think that's one of the comparisons that's always being made. And then all of a sudden, we can build the real estate, we can build e-commerce, we can build microtransactions, we can build trading platforms, and then it will be a game changer. Fees will be relevant. It'll be the fees will disappear. The middlemen will start being disrupted, and all of a sudden, every single industry that we've thought about, from healthcare to real estate to payments to jobs to everything, we have to think of, okay, now where am I in this position? Am I a middleman? Am I going to get disrupted? And this is going to happen rapidly. This is 5 to 10 years, and it'll happen, and jobs will be disrupted. And I think the guys that are going for the bold and can execute on this will really make a big impact, and that's what I'm really excited for.
Okay. A little earlier, I'd like you to talk a little bit about who's behind your project and some of the founders of StormX, and then also how do we learn more?
Yeah. So well, our project received a little bit of hype early on, just because we had some really solid advisors in the blockchain space that were supporting our project. So our first angel investor was Bill Shihara, who is the CEO of Bittrex Exchange, which is one of the largest exchanges in the world. We also have 3 of the Ethereum co-founders. One who actually built his own blockchain protocol named Charles Hoskinson, who's CEO of Cardano, ADA, Anthony Diorio, who is one of the co-founders, as well as the one that created Jax, and plenty more. I mean, you guys can check out our website and see our advisor list. But So one of the things that a lot of these guys were excited about us was the fact that we actually had built something, and we had a head start on what we could really start disrupting with this technology. And I think a lot of it is still ideas, but turning ideas into execution is really hard. And from us, especially when we're trying to raise money from angels and VCs, back when everyone thought it was money laundering, it was one of the hardest things in the world. Oh my God, we pitched to over 100 VCs, guys like Michael, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? You just mentioned the word Bitcoin. I'm never gonna fund you guys. Are you guys regulated and stuff? Like, no, like everything's in a gray area, but we have lawyers, and they said we're okay. But just being able to survive the grit and actually just bootstrapping our way to coming up with actual products and services without having to rely on fundraising, I think was one of the reasons why they decided to back us. And took us a while. It took.
So it's a 4-year-old project with the real mobile app right now.
Yeah, it was just a lot of work in between. Yeah, frustrations.
Very good. Good. And Daniel, could you talk a little bit about some of your other favorite projects out there?
Yeah, I think
and how you fit in
with me personally, right?
with
Not the
your
company,
company
per se.
and how you kind of fit in the picture.
Well, the way I look at what's going on in the crypto space is that we're generating tremendous amounts of capital. And I think one of the downsides is that everybody just wants to get rich quick. And I think that's nice. But more importantly, we have capital to use for purposes. And I think if we're democratizing access to capital and we're generating wealth at scale, then we should use them for projects that matter. And one of the big problems we have right now is carbon-based capitalism. We need a system of clean tech and green tech, and we should be using that capital, that kind of capital, smartly. So there's one company I can highlight called Zywatt. They're focusing on scaling clean tech using their token and using cryptocurrencies. And the premise is that we should be jumping over the utilities using the same network effects that we're using for cryptocurrencies. And I think that when we talk about trading, we should be trading for purpose, because wealth is only so valuable ultimately.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and open up for questions on some of these projects. Does anyone want to hear a little more or have general questions that you'd like one of the panelists to answer? Okay. If you could just stand up and I'll repeat your question. You right there. With the hoodie. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, good. Go ahead and stand up.
I had a question for the gentleman who's doing the commercial real estate development.
For Phil?
So I would like to know, is there any other projects that you're aware of that are doing something similar? Because I've heard of, the new, like the Realtor.com equivalents, those types of projects. I would like to hear more about tracking the commercial and residential, listings and all that.
Okay, for those on the video, I'll repeat your question and then Phil can answer it. He wants to know about some of the competing projects, the realtors, et cetera.
So yes, in the regards to fintech or the financial part, a lot of people compare us to Salt, which Salt lends you money against the cryptocurrencies you have, which we're lending against the real estate parts. And I know of like 2 other coins that I've heard of that are focused on real estate, and I haven't heard a whole lot more out of them, except for I know one got in trouble because I think it was called RE Coin or something because of, I think they lied about everything they said. So that's an important part, And the other major thing is to look at the team. I mean, like it sounds like the gentleman here, an incredible team makes a difference. Well, we pride ourselves with our team. So we have 3 law firms that we are focused with. One of them is Polsinelli, and they are huge in the crypto space. So it's kind of a funny situation when you go to an attorney or to a law firm and you say, hey, I'm launching a blockchain token. The first comment they say is, well, what's a blockchain, right? And that's a real challenge. And that's how we're using Stoll Reeves, which is a good reputable SEC compliant law firm. Well, they knew very little about the blockchain. However, they know a lot about securities. And so from there, we reached out to, when we did a presentation, Polsinelli, who happens to be huge in the crypto space, heard us and said, hey, we want to be a part of this because you guys have an amazing concept that we really want to be a part of. And it's something to do with the 1940s Act. So there's a called the 1940s Company Act or Investment Act, where if you're raising capital, then you're exempt from being a security. Well, there's an exception in there that says unless you're raising capital to refinance real estate. Because of that exemption, it allows us to maybe do what no other cryptocurrency is able to do, and that's to be a full regulated cryptocurrency. So we feel like we're really leading the way in this space.
Okay, that gentleman there, right there. Yes, just shout and we'll repeat your question.
Probably for Simon, but anyone's welcome to answer. I'm just interested in what are the technical hurdles that stand in the way of really allowing any sort of blockchain-based cryptocurrency to displace the global credit card that we currently have?
Yeah, so technical challenges, definitely the scaling issue is one of the biggest challenges. Ethereum only processes 13 transactions a second, while Visa, MasterCard does, thousands, right? So I think until we get to that hurdle, there's a technical challenge, but I think the biggest challenge for most crypto companies is securities laws and legal. Everyone's trying to figure out exactly how to stay compliant. I'm sure every single company here has faced the same thing too, but every week or 2 weeks, the lawyers give you different feedback based on what they're hearing. So we had to change our white paper, I think, 50 times before we even launched it. So once there's a clear regulation, and I think the Wisconsin Act just came out recently, it was pretty interesting. So the US is being more proactive. Swiss just came out with something last week. They're saying that there's 3 different types of tokens. And I think we're getting there, but until then, legal is one of the biggest hurdles. And I think technical challenges, scaling is definitely the biggest hurdle. And we have to overcome that. But 2018, there's probably about 20 blockchain protocols that are working on this very problem. So something will come this year.
Okay, Michael, you could probably chime in on a little bit on that.
Sure. So I'm a technologist. So I started my career writing open source software, and I still write software today. My view on the technology challenge is it's a huge hurdle. However, it's going to be solved within 6 months. Why am I saying that? Because all the ideas are already there. All the ideas have been floating around, like DPoS, Stack, like all those ideas has been floating around for the past 3 years. No one was able to fund them. They were not able to raise even $1 million. Now those projects are raising $50 million a piece. They are going to try everything under the sun in the next 6 months, and someone gonna succeed. Someone gonna solve this technical issue in the next 6 months. That's my assessment.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Questions? Right there in the front.
Yes, hi. This question is for Michael. So I think what I understand what you're talking about is you want to disrupt Amazon. You're either Amazon or number 2 to number 100. In building that network, is there a P&L objective? Because in the beginning, when Amazon was creating the network, they didn't really emphasize the P&L. They wanted to build the network, and then eventually, as it gets bigger, eventually they will get the benefit of from the P&L. So as you build the network, is there a P&L objective going in the beginning, or are you using the same principle where you build the network, become the dominant player, and then the benefits will accrue from that?
Do I need to repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. Could you please repeat the question? Well, the question is, he was asking about how Amazon's business model was build a network and then worry about the P&L. So what do you think about that?
From our point of view, this is the chief innovation the token cell has brought us, because in the past, if you build a network like this, there's no way for you to raise money. If you go to venture capitalists to say, I'm going to raise $100 million to become next to Amazon, you're going to be laughed out of the room. You have to build things from a little by little, right? But now, so that's why nobody was able to disrupt Uber, because they were excellent as fundraising game, right? But now, as a nonprofit foundation, as someone who builds a network, I can also raise money, and I can put this money into work in the whole space of by taking a loss initially and build a network. So I think that's maybe perhaps the most important things that happen in terms of business model. Because in the past, you can't do this. You are just a nonprofit. You have to spend all the money you raised in a year. But now with the cryptocurrency that you raised and with the currency that you issued yourself, you will be able to have the same kind of level play field.
So you'll be profitable from the get-go because you're actually raising money from
Right, but not operational profitable, right?
Not
And the foundation is not designed to be operational profitable either. It's designed to build a huge network, and the value of the network accrues in the cryptocurrency, the network issues. So if I may expand this a little, if the investors in you, I often tell VC this idea. That's say if you have perfect knowledge of the world and you have time machine, you travel back to 2009. Can you find the investment that's going to make you money? The answer is no, because there's no company has emerged from the Bitcoin ecosystem. There's no valuable company has emerged from the Ethereum ecosystem. You cannot find a company to invest, to buy equity. So for the VC investors, that's the most frustrating thing, because if you know the future, you know what makes money, you still can't make money off it. You can only make money from the network. That's the major difference. That's, I think, that's going to disrupt everything. That's the model of a for-profit company may go away. That's in the future.
Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
If you need additional capital, then where would that come from? Would that come from additional token sales?
Where will additional capital come from? Additional token sales or mining fees?
No, yeah, that's the beauty of this, right? There's we don't need to do another token sale because the token we hold appreciates in its value. It's like the Bitcoin miners keep getting richer because the tokens they hold keep getting more valuable. Of course, there would be one day it comes reckoning that's the market is going to crash, and this. But when this happens, that's also a good thing because that's eliminates a lot of the players that are not serious, right? So everything has two sides. But I don't see, for most projects, I don't see they need a second token sale. What they need is to build a network.
For that foundation to, hold for the appreciation, utilize the appreciation of
Yes.
that reserve token to fund the additional.
Right. So I think for all the token sales, you leave a portion for the foundation for the future project. And if you come across a token sale that leaves nothing for the foundation, don't invest because those people have no stake in the game, right? All they do is raise money and then they have nothing to do with the token anymore.
Very good. And you back there in the gray jacket? Yes, please stand up and shout your question.
How you assemble your team, because an important part of success is assembling the team, and I know you are a physicist by degree. How did you move into this space and assemble your team amongst the other guys? And another question is, what's your burnout rate if we assume that the token does not appreciate?
Okay, so let me repeat the questions for everyone that didn't hear that. How do you assemble your team? First, Michael's going to answer that. And then what is your burnout rate? And then we'll go down the line. Those are very good questions. Thank you.
For me, I really get lucky. That's because I have a technical background, and the company we work with, 5 Miles, has an excellent team that's already in place. We have over 30 people in Dallas and over 40 people in Beijing. So it's a multinational team that's the company has already built. That's where I think we got really lucky with the team, and the burnout. That's the interesting thing because. I can give you an example. So one of the projects that I know, I wouldn't name who is. That's in March 2017, they raised the money. They raised, so not counting the tokens they reserved for themselves. If you are talking about the token you reserve for yourself, not appreciating anymore, right? So they raised in BTC and ETH in March 2017. And by August 2017, when I talked with them about the potential investment, they said the token we raised is worth $200 million. How much money are you going to put in to get a stake in our company? That's I think it's largely dependent on the market condition. If the BTC and ETH keep going up, then all of those projects are going to survive. But if it crashes, then we're going to see who can execute.
So I've been running businesses for the past 18 years in the Treasure Valley out of Idaho, and I've always felt like, okay, if I'm going to start another company, I want to have a good CRM and a good way of connecting with the people we need. So when we're looking to launch this business, I pitched it to 18 people that were of certain caliber and of people that we knew that could get us to the end. And so one is like the CFO of Blue Cross. He had retired, and we really wanted a good CFO. Well, he was a perfect candidate because he knows how to do accounting and put things like this project, PPMs, and the rest of the stuff together. So that was an important part. We also reached out to Dr. Tom Ives, who happens to be a huge developer. He was programmer for Micron and for Hewlett-Packard, and so that was a perfect connection as well. So it's amazing how when things are meant to happen, it seems like everything falls into place. And so out of those 18 people we pitched to about a year and a half ago, there was 14 of them that said, yep, sign me up, I'm in, and they've stayed in. And as far as the burnout goes, our lawyers have written it in where if somebody wants out, well, they get $1, not $1 per share, they get a $1. Because we've seen as an investor into many ICOs and many cryptocurrencies, I think we currently have 53 cryptocurrencies. I've watched a lot of things where, a lot of things that people have done right and things that have done wrong. And so one of the big players in the market, they had a split, or one of their team members leaves and it causes the token to drop. So for us, this was an important piece on it because these are friends and family that have put money into, and ourselves, that have put into the initial tranche of this token. So it was really imperative that we have a good team, and if somebody wants out, they can't come back and sue you later for some insane amount. They get $1. So burnout makes it really low when you do that.
Very good, Simon.
So our strategy is to just hire really smart people not in the blockchain space. So a lot of the blockchain companies, one of the biggest hurdles is hiring blockchain developers. Is because I think there was a statistic that said for every 14 job openings, there's one blockchain developer out there, and it's because the really good guys, they can launch their own crowd sale. It's just an idea and just a little bit more kind of fluff, even at the stage, or they can work for a company for, people are bidding like $250,000 to $500,000 a year, in total compensation packages. So imagine you're trying to do that, it's really hard. But luckily, so our headquarters is based in Seattle. So we have a lot of really great companies like Amazon and Microsoft, DocuSign and Redfin, and a lot of these companies that smart people are really wanting to get exposure to blockchain. So we tend to bring in people from other high companies and train them on the blockchain aspect. So that's been working really well for us. And also for my side too, I really like to work with experienced leaders. As I know, myself, I'm still a young entrepreneur. So outside of myself, our executive team are all 20+ year experienced people. And in order to get attention, we're very proactive on the hiring side. So we go to a lot of the the meetups, the hackathons, and a lot of the events, and try to evangelize on our own. Because the more aggressive that we are, then we can actually scout from a better talent pool rather than just having one job posting on LinkedIn and saying, "Oh, come join us," and then your pool of applicants aren't necessarily that great. So we're pretty happy with our team. Everyone's very fast paced, works very fast because we know that this industry is moving rapidly and there's competitors everywhere, and there's also just scaling issues and all that stuff that we got to figure out as soon as possible. So.
And your burnout rate?
Well, a lot of it, we still do hold in crypto, so it depends on how Ether is doing, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of a complicated question because we have different pools from which we reach into. I mean, the company started with basically 3 founders in Canada that moved to New York City with an angel investor, and then began with sort of like Upwork, like HR platforms, and then moved through social networks in the blockchain space and in the technology space. And I think if you have a good idea and you have a passionate project, people will tend to be drawn to it. And if you have, it's sort of, one of our founders is very intuitive. He may select someone outside of the tech space, but believes in that person for whatever reason. And I think you have to have a sort of a wily sensibility about, talent in a way. It's sort of unpredictable. And building on that, you can also look for connections and networks, people that then join the company can recommend people and they'll, check it out. And in terms of, we're still scaling, so, and it's a rough process, you're like flying a plane and building the plane at the same time. So it can be very exhausting as well. So in terms of burning out, I think that's to be decided. It's still ongoing, right?
Thank you. Okay, Wayne, you had a question?
I did. I noticed two things. One, you didn't get a question. I have a question for you. The second thing I noticed, you're disrupting e-commerce. You're disrupting real estate. You're disrupting tasks. You're not disrupting. It seems you're enabling. Are you disrupting things, or are you enabling things?
Well, that's a great
Enabler.
question. She asked me the same
All right.
question before I got up here, actually. And I think
All right, so for people who can't hear it on the camera, Wayne just said, each of these gentlemen are disrupting their sectors, and the question is Daniel disrupting or enabling?
Well, it's my company. I mean, I don't want to take credit for the whole thing. So our view is essentially this, that the crypto space is burgeoning. It's growing. It's a democratizing technology, blockchain. It's a democratizing space. Having said that, there's a tremendous amount of capital outside the blockchain space. And our view is that capital is going to become mainstream, regardless of what we do or anyone else does. And so what we're trying to do is bridge cryptocurrencies and the cryptocurrency space with the hedge fund and institutional investor space, and do that in a way that ideally facilitates compliance and overcomes regulatory hurdles, and perhaps ideally encourages the SEC to come down on crypto in a smart way, so that these regulations are transparent and explicit, so that then companies can then be built. Once we have that capital in hand, we want to use it for purpose. So in our view, that capital should go somewhere, and we're trying to feed that capital into spaces that we think it needs to go. So in a sense, we're developing tools that hedge funds can use for the crypto, and in turn, it'll become retail once we have.
And you had a good example with
Tesla.
Tesla.
An analogy I gave was with
Okay.
Tesla, right? The first complaint with Tesla is they're creating sports cars for rich people. But as you watch the trajectory of that company, they're creating more and more mainstream cars. And why are they doing it? Because they want to create clean tech. So you can argue, oh, they're serving the rich, sure. But the reality is that we have some significant problems we need to solve, much larger than just making people rich through crypto. And so I think our company is built on a larger purpose than just tools for trading per se.
Okay,
We have an open platform, open APIs that will allow developers to develop tools for anyone. And I think we see it as a kind of a means to that end.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Now we have just two more questions, and the gentleman in the blue.
My question is for any of the panelists. How quickly do you see banks, large banks, embracing the blockchain technology, and how that will bring to banks competitive advantage?
How quickly do you see banks adopting blockchain technology?
Well, they're trying to adopt it as quickly as they can. Part of the problem is scalability, right? So you have R3 a consortium, which is trying to do that job. I think that it's hard to know where this is going to go, right? It's, both in terms of regulation and in terms of the technology itself. The technology itself is evolving. I don't think it's mature enough to make an argument for the mainstream to use. And I think companies like ours are trying to create tools that bring them in, right? And do it in a way that facilitates both sides, so that we work with Ethereum, but we also have a private ledger. So we're trying to do everything at once in a sense. But what we're really trying to do is bridge spaces, because I think that the ideal of the peer-to-peer model, which is laudable, is to democratize and get rid of the middleman. Awesome. The downside is that creating a war between the insiders and the outsiders is mostly just, for the idealists. And I think the realists recognize that everyone is in this together, and we're going to have to shape events collaboratively. So there's going to be the bridge builders as well as the disruptors. And I think we think of ourselves as trying to disrupt through bridge building. Now, whether we actually accomplish that is a different question, and it's a credible,
Okay.
respectable question.
Thank you. And Simon?
It's actually, I think there was an article recently that said Bank of America has more blockchain patents than anyone else. And I think there is a fact, one of our advisors, Charles Hoskinson, said this beautiful quote. It said, asking bankers what they think about blockchain is like asking a taxi driver what they like about Uber. It's just like, and so Jamie Dimon said, Bitcoin is a fraud, but then as soon as he said that, there was actually statistics that JP Morgan was the #1 buyer of Bitcoin the day after. So there's clearly manipulation going on Wall Street, but they're all aware. Their transaction fees that I was mentioning earlier, that $1 trillion industry, even if you switch it over to Ethereum and it scales just a little bit better, then it's already disrupted. So why would the banks want to miss out on that? They already have $1 trillion in assets. They're they're researching, they're doing it behind the scenes. But right now, they have such a profitable industry that until it is disrupted, they're not going to start the engines. They're going to make this as profitable as possible. And then if someone, like maybe Ripple really will come up with a banking solution, we don't know, or some of the other guys, and then they will turn on the engine and do something with it.
Thank you. Phil?
Yeah, the way I see it is that you look at people that are gouging, people that take advantage of the common people, there's going to be a disruptors. And so you look at gases, when gas prices hit $5, that's when innovation really started. That's when we start seeing electric cars and so forth come up. When you saw phone book ads, I remember advertising, initially starting at $250 a month, it went to $450, $500, $700. When it hit $1,000, I was like, no way, this is ridiculous to advertise in a phone book ad. Well, then what happens? Everything switches over to the internet and so forth. So I think just natural selection, it just seems to happen where there's disruptors. So with the banking, we just saw where Wells Fargo just got one of the largest lawsuits, I believe it was, right? Well, when you see stuff that's happening where people are gouging and taking advantage of us, people step up and take action. So if I was going to put a time frame on it, I'd say in the next 7 to 10 years, we'll start seeing some major changes in the banking industry and so forth, because they're going to have no choice.
Okay, this is going to be our last answer.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. I'm also on the disruptor camp, as you can tell. I'm not that interested in efficiency improvement for the banks, but more interested in the disruption. I will quote a tweet that was, I think yesterday someone tweeted a Goldman Sachs report. Goldman Sachs report title was, Goldman Sachs sees Bitcoin as a solution searching for a problem. And someone tweeted behind it to say, maybe Goldman Sachs didn't realize it is the problem.
Well, thank you. Let's give everyone a round of applause, and we'll be back in 10 minutes at 5:05.